All right, and good Monday evening, Mid-Michigan. Chief Meteorologist Chris Easlick with your Monday night forecast update. Looks like we've got some snow, at least trying to move into the TV5 viewing area tonight. Not really having a ton of success doing so, but we will sort it through anyway and see what we've got for not only tonight, but the next couple of days. I think there's a couple of big stories ongoing. I think there's the cold weather that we will deal with, which is not so surprising considering it is winter now. But also the fact that it's going to stay cooler. And so the snow that we picked up, I would say over the last couple of days, really not anticipating that going anywhere. So welcome to tonight's chat. We'll let some folks join in here. We've got about 40 people joining in thus far. So feel free to ask a question, say hi throughout this, and hope you all had a good Thanksgiving. So taking a look at our forecast for tonight, let me just pull up the graphics here. If you take a look at downtown Saginaw, really not all that impressive, but I can tell you that there are some flurries happening outside of our Saginaw studios right now. And so we are getting at least a little bit of snow flurry activity coming down. I don't think it's going to be uniform tonight. I think you're going to have some spots here and there that pick up a little bit more than others. I would say those who have some accumulation potential, probably looking at between about a ½ inch to an inch or so. But I don't think that's going to be for everybody. Clearly downtown Flint is having a little bit more success on some of that snow actually reaching the ground. But what we have is we have an area of high pressure that is right around Canada for the time being. And what that's doing is it's fighting off some of the snow. You can see it's mostly to the east of us in Ontario, but what it's been doing is a lot of the snow, you can see the loop on the satellite there over the last couple of hours. You can see some of that lake effect from the opposite side of the state. They're getting absolutely buried along parts of the Lake Michigan shoreline tonight. Some additional winter storm warnings there once again, and that of course follows plenty of snow this weekend. But we have that area of high pressure that's fighting things off, and if you take a look, if you look towards this area right here, you'll see that some of that snow has tried to move in at various times of the night, and it's just fizzled out once it's gotten here. So the air is really dry. It's basically just being eaten up by that big area of high pressure. I do think we will see some snow tonight. We're clearly seeing that in Flint, and we've clearly seen some flurries reach the ground in Saginaw, and I think we'll see that elsewhere. I just don't think it's going to be anything that's even comparable to the weekend. But the one thing that I will say is more of a concern tonight is even though it's not a ton of snow, this is where we're headed. We've got low temperatures that are headed towards the teens later tonight. And of course, the colder we get, even a little bit of snow, even if it's just that really fine flurry, sometimes that can cause some problems out on the road. So we want you aware of that tomorrow morning. The one bright side is with how cold this is tomorrow morning, I don't necessarily think we're looking at a dramatic wind chill. I think you'll probably be a little bit colder than some of those lows show right there. I think you may be seeing some wind chill values close to 10, 11, 12, 13, somewhere in there. So you're shaving off maybe a few degrees, but I don't think your feels like temperature or your wind chill is dramatically different than what you see on your screen right now for your low temperatures tonight. And then once we get into tomorrow, it should be right back up to about the upper 20s to low 30s. So Tuesday itself, really not all that bad. It's just the fact that we never really warm up. So any snow that we do pick up tonight, I want you to be very careful early tomorrow morning just to be on the safe side. So Sherry says, good evening, Chris. Charlotte says, how much snow are we going to get? Not much. I would say we're probably going to get between about a ½ inch up to an inch or so. And what I want you to realize with this map tonight is we'll take this out to roughly, let's see, about 7 o'clock tomorrow morning. I would look at this map tonight more as snow potential, not necessarily what you're going to get, because I think that dry air is going to be a factor over most of the area. So I would say this tells a story of what sort of the snow potential is tonight, but not necessarily what to expect. I think really it's just going to be kind of a here and there thing with whoever can overcome that area of high pressure that we just talked about. But I think we have a slightly better chance in places like Roscommon County, Ogama County, those types of areas, maybe a little bit more of a chance towards the Flint region as well. But if I think you're in the Bay region, kind of around that US 10 corridor areas just to the south of there, are you really going to see all that much? Probably not tonight. And again, this is nowhere near some of the totals we picked up this weekend. Generally about 5 to maybe 9 inches of snow. That seemed to be the most popular range. Did see a couple of totals that I think were close to double digits. closer to areas like West Branch. It seemed like there was some drifting going on too. I did a lot of measurements in my yard, right around 7 to 8 inches, but it did seem like 7 was a little bit more common when I was doing measurements in my yard. So I went with 7 rather than the 8, just because 8 was a bit more of an outlier. But what we expect tonight really isn't going to be anything close to what we picked up this weekend. Jason and Lori Brown, snowed pretty good in West Branch. Roads were covered and a little slick. Was that tonight? I'm assuming you're probably talking about tonight. Charlotte says, what causes thunder snow? Pretty much the same process that we see in the summer. It's just we have the cold temperatures instead of the warm. So to get thunderstorms, we have to have warm air near the surface and colder air above it. Air rises as long as it's warmer than its surrounding environment. Air continues to rise once it starts rising on its own. So in the wintertime, we don't have warm temperatures, but as long as that air near the ground relative to the air above it is much warmer, then we have a chance for that instability, that upward motion to build up during the winter months, and we get pretty much the same process. It just happens to be a lot colder during the winter. Any school cancellations tomorrow morning? I would say probably would work against that. I can't necessarily say it's impossible if we get some snow that causes some ice tonight, but I wouldn't necessarily count on it. Let's see what we've got. Roads were covered in West Branch. Okay. So Jason and Lori, thanks for your report. Both of you, very loyal stream watchers. Here's a look at the hour by hour. We've kind of focused on the amounts thus far, but let's just take a look at what's going on as we go through tonight. You'll notice the snow is much more consistent to our south and to our west as we go through tonight. You'll notice it's a lot less uniform over the TV5 viewing area, which is our counties right here, the ones that are outlined. That is the area. We know we get some folks that watch the stream from other areas, but our area locally right here, you'll notice it never really has much success getting going. I think we've got enough to get some snow in places tonight. We've clearly seen that, but it's just not the threat that it is on the other side of the state. And then once we get later into tomorrow morning, we really start to clear out again. Everything sort of dries out. This time of year, it's really tricky to actually get all of the cloud cover to go away. So are we going to break into mostly sunny skies? I would say at least most of the day, probably not. But I think at the very least, we'll get some partial sunshine back in the mix tomorrow, which should be pretty nice. We stay pretty much dry through Tuesday evening. I think we will have another chance for snow on Wednesday. The main threat up to this point in our data has been primarily the second half of Wednesday. But taking a look at this model tonight, seems like it may be trending a little bit sooner. So what we have to watch for, is that trend going to be something that's consistent? Is it just one model run that pushes it a little bit sooner, then it goes right back to being in the second half of the day? I think that's something worth watching. Still have all the way through tomorrow to get to Wednesday's chance, so we'll keep refining the forecast on that. I do think Wednesday, while it may not be a ton of snow, I think it'll be more along a frontal boundary that comes through. So usually those are pretty progressive and not to the point where they're going to linger for a long period of time like this weekend. But I do think there's potential maybe for a few snow squalls to mix in there on Wednesday. So we'll just have to be careful out on the roads. Got 79 people on the stream tonight. Appreciate all of you. Shannon says, is it going to snow really bad tomorrow? No, most of it's tonight and early tomorrow. I don't think you'll see really anything get heavy like it was this weekend. I really don't think it'll be even close. Taylor, is Saginaw going to get Wednesday snow in the morning or night? How much do you think we will get Wednesday? I think it's a little too early to say on Wednesday, especially because it looks like more of a scattered snow. But I wouldn't expect anything like the weekend on Wednesday either. Nichelle, what are the roads looking like tomorrow morning in Bridgeport? I think it depends on if you get snow tonight. If you get snow tonight, I think it's possible you get a little bit of icy conditions just because we're looking at teens. I mean, these are, we back up to, let's go to tomorrow morning. Right around 5, 6, 7 o'clock, we've got teens in low 20s. So it really doesn't take much snow, even if it's a little bit. And even if it's some of this grainy snow that almost looks like drizzle sometimes, we can get some ice on the roads there, especially those bridges and overpasses. So I would say, again, even though it's not a ton of snow tonight, just be careful tomorrow morning. Braden, appreciate it. Snowing in the Thumb for over an hour now. So we are getting snow someplace. I don't want this to be that we aren't going to get snow tonight. I just think it's probably not going to be a uniform snow because we've got that big area of high pressure that's still fighting it off in some areas. We'll just say not every ground observation site tonight with snow overhead on radar is reporting snow at the ground. So I just think it's a little bit more inconsistent tonight than it was this weekend. Let's see. We've got Stacy on. Liz says, thanks for all you do, Chris. Absolutely. It was a busy weekend. I was off for the Thanksgiving holiday, but was watching, of course, the weather this weekend, trying to do at least a few social media updates along the way. Pretty good snowfall this weekend. Got off to a slow start. We expected most of it to be overnight and during the late evening hours, but I probably went to bed because I have an 9-month-old. Better be careful. I got a 9-month-old, and I went to bed closer to about 1:30 on Saturday night and looked out the window and was definitely thinking, hopefully we pick up the pace here for forecast purposes, and we certainly did. So like I said, I got 7 in my yard with a few spots that were measuring 8. So it was a pretty good snow this weekend. Let's see, Wendy, TV5 Weather Team rocks. Yes, we miss Kyle, absolutely. As far as the temperatures later this week, just because we've got some people on the stream that are starting to drop off now. One of the other subjects that I wanted you to know is we're not really expecting this cold air to go anywhere anytime soon. And so I know up to this point in the winter, we've had some melting snow. We've had a little bit of snow here and there, and then it melts and it goes away, and the pavement's warmer, and the pavement, takes care of a lot of it. But over the next couple of weeks here, I don't really think there's going to be much opportunity to really melt a lot of this down, at least enough to get back to grass in a lot of areas. We've got teens right through the end of this week. It looks like early next week we've got some 20s, a few scattered snow chances along the way. So, yeah, I think the snow is going to stick around, and if I pull it up, I did pull this up on our other computer here. Let me see if I can get this graphic up. Might be a little bit tough to see. It doesn't always come through quite as much, but this is a blend of all of our models. This is based out of MBS Airport just because it's a really centralized location around the TV5 viewing area, but it shows all of our models. If we kind of blended them all together, combined all of that data, and basically kind of averaged them out, this is what we get. And notice even into next week, even into Monday the 8th, Tuesday the 9th, all our highs pretty much averaging about the upper 20s. So no significant warm-ups there, even going into next week. Will it stay that way? Let me see if I can pull up the Climate Prediction Center outlook just to see what the latest is, because I've been off a lot and I haven't looked at this in a while. But if you look at the 8 to 14 day temperature outlook, it leans a bit cooler than average. So that takes us all the way out to roughly about December 9th through the 15th. And so I think through the middle of the month, we could probably be on the cooler side of things. So again, not really anticipating a lot of this going anywhere as far as any significant melting. Now, I noticed yesterday, at least, that I was at least able, once I snowblowed my driveway, I was able to see that things melted pretty quickly once we got a little bit of that daylight out on Sunday. And even though it doesn't seem like it, our late November sun angle compared to December and January, still strong enough to do some work and get us a little bit of that energy to melt the snow. Not necessarily a dramatic difference between December and January, but just enough to where even if we have temperatures below freezing, you can still get a bit of that melting factor from some of that incoming radiation, even if it's cloudy. It still gets through the clouds. So Give this just another few minutes. I don't have a ton tonight. Again, let me see if I can go back to our graphics just one more time. This is kind of what we expect for tonight, and it's just a rough estimate. This is just a model that we have. Those aren't perfect, but I think it gives us the general trend pretty well tonight. That the most snowfall totals will generally be between about a ½ inch to an inch if you even get accumulation tonight, which I don't think is going to be for everybody. So not a huge snow. My main concern for all of you tonight is not the amount of snow, but just the fact that temperatures are falling pretty quickly. We're down in the teens tonight for overnight lows, and if you take a look at our Flint camera, there is some snow that is covering the streets. And so it's not going to take much for things to be a little slippery once you get out the door tomorrow morning. So other than that, I appreciate you all tuning in tonight. We'll do this obviously again tomorrow night, and we'll do this, of course, when we have bigger storm systems to talk about. I'm sure this past weekend is not the only one that we will have this season, so we'll be with you every step of the way. Felt pretty good about that forecast this weekend. Winter is tricky, but felt that our map worked out well. Felt that the impacts kind of followed through to what we expected, even though it may have taken most of Saturday to really get going. Let's see. Stacy asks, any more significant accumulation the rest of the week? I would say at this point, probably not. I'm interested in Wednesday more for some of those snow showers as they move through. Could there be a little bit more intensity with some of those snow showers on Wednesday? Yes, but they're also more progressive. They don't linger so long. So I don't necessarily think they're going to drop a ton of snow, but we'll get some better data on Wednesday tomorrow. I think we'll get some more specifics as we get closer. Yep, and Kristen says it's snowing in Midland right now. So we are overcoming some of that dry air. Those are good reports to have. Even though the radar doesn't look all that impressive, I'm wondering if this is more of if we've got some drizzly snow in there. That's kind of sneaking under the beam. We just might have to turn the intensity up a little bit to detect some of those smaller flakes. But otherwise, we will end the stream there. So thanks for all your reports. Thanks for hopping on with me and making this stream worthwhile. It's not very fun when we only have 5 people on, but we've gotten a better crowd as we've gone throughout the last couple of weeks. So appreciate that. And we will do more of these. In the meantime, I'm going to get ready for our 10 o'clock newscast, and we will talk to you all tomorrow.